Welcome everyone, this on is Restart, and this time we're talking about how the recent Super Mario 35th Anniversary Direct could perhaps be hinting at some things for a 35th anniversary for Zelda as well. So before we get into that, I want to quickly talk about my social media. There is a Twitter page, a Discord community, a Patron page, and a Twitch channel. If you're interested in any of that, check it all out. It is linked in the description below. Now before I get into how this Mario Anniversary Direct has changed my expectations a little bit for the Zelda anniversary, let's first talk about why I think Nintendo's going to celebrate Zelda's 35th anniversary. And the most obvious one is because, well, Nintendo has plans for Mario's 35th anniversary, and Zelda's not too far off either. And the thing about Zelda is that it's also one of Nintendo's biggest, most special franchises, and the franchise has only grown over the years. In fact, Breath of the Wild is selling better than Super Mario Odyssey. But it should be noted that Mario Odyssey came out after Breath of the Wild, so Breath of the Wild had an advantage. However, Mario Odyssey did eventually exceed the sales for Breath of the Wild, but now more recently, Breath of the Wild has overtaken the sales for Mario Odyssey. The point is, Breath of the Wild is selling incredibly well, the Zelda franchise has reached even greater heights than ever before, and we're seeing even more regular releases for Zelda than we ever have. Nintendo is starting to use Zelda a lot like Mario, not quite to the same extent, but to a great level. They're trying to come out with at least one Zelda game every single year, so it does sort of suggest that there's a pretty good chance that something is happening for Zelda's 35th anniversary. Not to mention, we've seen multiple retail listings for both Breath of the Wild 2 and Skyward Sword come up recently, and of course Breath of the Wild 2 has been in development for quite some time. 2021 seems to be the year when it's coming out. And on top of that, next year will be the 10-year anniversary for Skyward Sword. So a lot of signs are pointing towards either Skyward Sword or Breath of the Wild, or both of them releasing sometime in 2021 for the 35th anniversary for Zelda. And on top of all of that, we've also seen Nintendo make a whole bunch of trademarks for merchandising for both Zelda, and Nintendo also did that for Mario, and now after we've seen what Nintendo is doing for the Mario anniversary, it does look like Nintendo is gearing up for something similar for Zelda as well. Which brings us to the recent Mario Direct, which had a whole bunch of announcements for Mario. We saw 3D World Deluxe announced, we saw Mario Kart Live Circuit, we saw Mario 35, we saw several shadow drops, and of course the long-rumored Mario remasters, which are being called Super Mario 3D All-Stars. All of that is coming out in the near future, and all of that was announced during this Mario Anniversary Direct. Is it possible that maybe we could get some sort of Zelda Anniversary Direct sometime next year where they make similar announcements? I think that's definitely a possibility. The precedent has already been set with Mario. We might see something similar for Zelda. I do think it's fair to consider though that Mario is still a bigger brand than Zelda. Nintendo's always going to use Mario more than Zelda, even though Zelda has gotten a lot more usage lately, and I expect that to continue to trend upwards, but still not to the same level as Mario. So Nintendo may not go the same route and have a fully dedicated 35th anniversary Zelda Direct, but that doesn't mean they don't have some plans for Zelda. At the very least, I think there's going to be at least one Zelda game that's going to come out, and it's going to be used to celebrate the 35th anniversary, but if I had to bet, I say even more than that's going to be coming out, and we've already seen the trademarks for different pieces of merchandising that are going to be coming out as well, just like the Mario anniversary, so I'm definitely thinking Nintendo does have a lot of plans. I'm just not sure it's going to be to the same exact extent as the Mario anniversary. So Breath of the Wild 2 seems like a given for 2021. That seems fairly obvious. When it comes out in 2021 is the tougher call though. I personally feel like if we have to wait all the way until holiday 2021, that would be a little bit too long. The game was shown off back at E3 2019. The game started development back in 2017. If the game were to come out all the way at the end of 2021, I feel like that would be a very long time for a sequel to have been made, but it is possible, especially considering the pandemic. The pandemic may have pushed it up a few months, so it may be the case that Zelda won't be coming out until holiday 2021, but I might sort of expect it for a little bit sooner. There are reports suggesting that a Switch revision is coming out in early 2021, perhaps around the end of Nintendo's fiscal year. So what if both Breath of the Wild 2 and the Switch revision come out alongside of each other March 2021? I think there's a chance of that. Now, I'm not saying it's super likely, but I do think there's at least a chance. I do feel like Nintendo would love to have Breath of the Wild 2 come out for the 4-year anniversary for Breath of the Wild for the Switch, and also it'd be a month after the 35th anniversary for Zelda. Technically, the anniversary for Zelda is this February, so we're just a few months away. Now you might ask, well, why wouldn't Nintendo just come out with something in February instead of March? Well, here's the thing, we recently got an announcement for 3D World coming out this February, and a game like that that's getting additional new content with Bowser's Fury seems to be pretty extensive. In fact, 3D World Deluxe seems to be perhaps one of the most ambitious Wii U ports we've seen on the Switch, so I'm definitely thinking Nintendo's going to want to have February dedicated to this 3D World port. I feel like it's fairly unlikely that Nintendo will also shoehorn in another major release into February, but I'll also say that if Nintendo does want to really push things here, having both a big Mario game and a big Zelda game to come out pretty close to each other around the same time as a Switch revision would make a lot of sense. When the Switch Lite came out back in 2019, there were several games that came out in September, such as Dragon Quest XI's and Link's Awakening Remake. And it wasn't just at September, the months beforehand and afterwards were also chock full of published Nintendo games, so it's conceivable that 2021 is going to have a very stacked year, especially considering that 2020 has been so slow. So we may be looking at a situation where we're going to be getting several different Nintendo games for multiple months consecutively. I think that can maybe happen. So it wouldn't entirely shock me if we see something fairly close release to 3D World, but in terms of what I'm expecting, I'm not expecting anything else to come out in February, but that doesn't mean something can't come out in March. And if it isn't Breath of the Wild 2 to come out alongside a Switch revision, maybe instead we could see Skyward Sword HD or a Zelda collection. Which brings me to another point about the Mario Anniversary Direct. We got to see the confirmation for the 3 3D Mario games in one actual retail release, the 3D All-Stars. We got Sunshine, Galaxy, and Mario 64. The precedent has been set now for Nintendo to include 3 different Mario games in one package. What if we see something similar for Zelda? Now admittedly, from what we've seen of the 3D All-Stars compilation, it's not super ambitious. They didn't completely remake the graphics here or add a whole bunch of new content. While I'm excited for them, they are still fairly basic remasters here. So if Nintendo were to go ahead and give us a 3-game compilation of Wind Waker HD, Twilight Princess HD, and Skyward Sword HD, that would be something that I would consider to be a little bit more of a bigger deal than the 3D All-Stars. But you could also make the argument that both Twilight Princess HD and Wind Waker HD have already been made, so there's not that much additional work that needs to be done with those games. You simply port them over, and then you give us Skyward Sword HD. And then maybe Skyward Sword HD doesn't have too many changes, it just has a resolution bump, and they give us both traditional controls and Joy-Con controls. I think that's conceivable, and maybe they could all come in one package. But let's just say this 3-game compilation isn't happening, and maybe Nintendo's going to focus on Breath of the Wild 2 and bring over one of those games, and maybe that game is Skyward Sword HD, given that it's going to have its 10-year anniversary soon, and then it's also, again, it's been used to celebrate the 25th anniversary, and we've seen listings for it. I would say that Skyward Sword makes more sense to come to Switch than Wind Waker or Twilight Princess, even though I want all 3 of them to come. If Skyward Sword is coming, when would it come out? Let's say, in a best case scenario, Breath of the Wild 2 and a Switch revision are coming out this March, and that's a best case scenario. There's a really good chance it's going to come out later into the year. If that's the case, when do we see Skyward Sword? Because the anniversary for Zelda is this February, so when would they put Skyward Sword? Would it come out after Breath of the Wild 2? I think that's technically possible, but usually we see remasters and things of that nature come up before the big next new Zelda game. So I feel like it makes more sense to expect Skyward Sword to come out beforehand. And maybe that's enough evidence to think that Breath of the Wild 2 still has a ways to go, and we'll have to wait a little bit later into the year before that comes. But there's also the possibility that Skyward Sword comes out before February. What if it comes out this year? What if it comes out in either November or December? You see, another interesting thing that we could sort of take away from the Mario Anniversary Direct was that Nintendo still hasn't announced anything for November or December. A lot of people were thinking, myself was considering it right at the end before it was announced, that maybe the Mario Remasters would be Nintendo's big holiday release. But the Mario Remasters are coming out in just a couple weeks for September. And then in October we have the Mario Kart sort of spin-off toy thing and Pikmin 3 Deluxe. But for November, the biggest sales period of the year, all Nintendo has is the Crown Tundra Pokemon Sword and Shield DLC and nothing for December. I feel like there's a really good chance that at least one more game will be announced from Nintendo. What if it's Skyward Sword? I feel like Skyward Sword would be a great holiday release. It would be something people would be very excited about. It definitely has that holiday feel in my opinion, and it could be something that could start to store up that Zelda hype, that Zelda anniversary hype, and it would be enough time before March to give enough space for Breath of the Wild 2. I think that's a possibility. It makes a lot of sense, especially considering that it does seem like Nintendo wants to come out with a major Zelda game every single year, and all they have announced for this year so far is a re-release of an indie game that came out last year, and that was Cadence of Hyrule. Cadence of Hyrule came out last year, and we also got a Link's Awakening remake. Now, Nintendo doesn't have to hold to that idea that a Zelda game has to come out every single year. I really think they don't have to do that, but I understand the thinking behind it because they want to push the Zelda brand the same way they want to push the Mario brand, so getting Zelda out there as much as possible definitely makes sense. But if you consider that the 35th anniversary for Zelda is just a couple months into 2021, maybe they'll hold off a Zelda game, especially considering the pandemic situation, and have it come out then. So say Skyward Sword comes out this March instead, or maybe even February, they shoehorn it in there along with 3D World Deluxe, and that's 35th anniversary celebration there, and then a little bit later into the year, we see Breath of the Wild 2. I think that's possible. I can definitely see that happening. So really, there's a whole bunch of possibilities here. It's hard to say for sure how things are going to pan out, but these are my main takeaways from this Mario Anniversary Direct in terms of what is suggested for a potential 35th anniversary celebration for Zelda. One is that we may see a presentation or a slew of announcements just like the Mario one for Zelda. That's a possibility. Two, because 3D All-Stars is coming out this September, that leaves room for at least one more Nintendo announcement, maybe two for November and December, which gives an opportunity for maybe Skyward Sword HD to come out around that time. But also three, because 3D World Deluxe is coming out this February as opposed to January, February is actually the 35th anniversary time for Zelda, maybe that means that Nintendo is holding something big for the end of the fiscal year, like a Breath of the Wild 2, or maybe at least Skyward Sword to end things, kind of like what they did with Animal Crossing for this year, and maybe also a Switch revision comes out around that time as well. And then 4, because 3D All-Stars is now confirmed, that precedent from Nintendo has been set to have compilations for anniversaries. We've now seen the 3D All-Stars be a 3-game 3D Mario compilation, so maybe we could see something similar for Zelda, and heck, while I'm at it, maybe we see something similar for Metroid as well. Metroid's 35th anniversary is coming in 2021, and there is the long-rumored Metroid Prime trilogy, so maybe in 2021 we'll see both a 3-game compilation for Zelda and Metroid. That would be very exciting to see, and I think it's at least possible. So again, there's a lot of different possibilities here, but if I was a betting man, I'm gonna say that at the very least, by this March, there will be at least one Zelda game to come out to help celebrate the 35th anniversary. Will it be Breath of the Wild 2? I hope so, but maybe that takes a little bit longer. It really wouldn't shock me if they at least see a Skyward Sword come out by that point. That's my prediction, but we'll see what actually happens. But anyways, everyone, those are my thoughts on what this Mario Direct may be suggesting for a Zelda anniversary. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. This is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.